Steve Peterson.
And I'm Jack Hinkle.
And we'd like to thank you for joining us on Chop's podcast today. Today is something in the middle of January. I don't know. It's just like a constant gray cloud outside.
It's true. January's been a rough month.
We've had 2.5 days off because of bad weather.
Yeah, I thought we were going to say 2.5 feet of snow, which has been true at some point.
We did have a lot of snow, but, we've had the deep freeze, we've had the ice, and we've had the mega snow.
And we've had the sleet.
And the fog.
Oh, my gosh, the fog.
Now it's like this week it's going to be 40 and the snow's all going away.
Yeah. The weather's like, I don't know what's going on. You?
Right.
No, well, hey, we might actually have 5 days of school this week.
That's exciting. I'm ready.
I'm ready
to run. I'm stretching out the hammies. I'm ready to go. Okay, so this week we're going to talk about mentorship. Mentorship.
Okay, we got it. Okay.
So we're going to talk about being a mentor or being mentored by somebody else. We call that a mentee.
That's true. And that's something that every teacher goes through at some point.
Right.
Is called student teaching.
Right.
And sometimes you have a teacher in your building or in your department that kind of takes you under their wing when you start out, or sometimes you are that teacher.
Right. And then also we could also dive into like being a teacher, a mentor to students.
Yes.
And so kind of maybe away from like classroom activities, maybe into like leadership and best practices to kind of gain more traction as a mover and a shaker in the school community with students.
All right. What do you got, Steve?
Okay. So
he's been sitting on this one. He's like excited. He's got
I am, because it goes back to one of our first guests we had, Ken Snook.
He was the man. Right? He knew what's going on.
One of the smartest people in the world. And he was my student teacher, cooperating teacher, when I was a senior in my senior year at DePaul. And I student taught with Ken from the middle of July to the middle of December.
That's a long time to student teach. That's a long time. That was your only placement, right?
Right.
Dang.
And so this is, I'll just get right into it. When I called up Ken and said, "Can I come and student teach with you?" He said, "You're going to come in for an interview."
He made you interview to student teach with him?
Yes.
I don't think that's normal, is it?
No.
Like, I didn't have to do that.
So that's when I realized I was getting into something.
Yeah.
And I didn't know him. I knew him through a common friend at school, but I met with him, and he did interview me and kind of wanted to know a little bit about me, but then he also wanted to say, okay, if I accept you as a student teacher, here's what I expect of you. And he said, everything that I do as a band director, from band camp until the Christmas concert or the holiday concert the week before Christmas, you're going to do.
And that's a lot, right?
He said, if I'm at a band rehearsal, you're there. If I'm at a band trip, you're there. If I'm at a booster meeting, you're there.
If I'm late at my office doing some score study,
you're there.
Wow.
If I'm meeting with an assistant principal on a discipline issue of a student, you're there.
So you literally were his shadow, following him everywhere. Yep. Wow.
So he said, that's the way it's going to be. And he said, this is in the suburbs of Chicago, near the Schaumburg area, which is like 45 minutes away from the city. I was a student, and he said, you will have to live in the community. I do not want you. He wasn't like adamant, like saying you have to. He's like, you really need to live in the community.
Sure.
I don't want you commuting, because then you're not a part of the community. So he wrangled one of his assistant directors who had a townhouse and basically said the student teachers can live with you, who ended up being a very dear friend. And that guy was a great student teacher too. His name was Blake Weiner, and he was a middle school band director. And did the woodwinds of the marching band, and he ended up being a wonderful friend and a mentor for me.
Wow! So
I lived with him for 6 months.
Wow! And because you would have been commuting from DePaul,
right? So downtown.
So living in the community, just giving you a better
He's like, I want
students.
you to know the parents. I want you to know the kids. I want you to go to their restaurants. I want you to go to their meetings. I want you to do everything.
Did that make a difference?
Oh my gosh! So the other thing.
Yes. Sorry, that wasn't sarcastic. That. It did make a difference.
My student teaching experience was unlike anybody else's I've ever heard about. And I owe that all to Ken, because he said this is the way it's going to be. And Ken was the kind of guy that said, when schools ask him if they want to have a student teacher, or when they did when he was working, he didn't automatically say yes because he put so much time and effort into it.
Yeah.
He did not take it lightly. And so he knew how much time it took to be an effective student teacher, supervising teacher, that he did not want every year or every other year. It was really like he was on a 5-year rotation.
Wow.
So the other thing that happened is after every rehearsal, we had a talk. I should say at the end of every school day, we sat down and we talked about, and he made me keep a journal and write down, if I was not on the podium or if I was not the lead teacher, to write down what I saw Ken doing, but then also write down what I was doing. But he sat down with me Monday through Friday in the band room after rehearsal.
How long was that each day?
At least a half hour.
Wow. So that's an extra 2.5 hours a week, maybe
Yes.
more if you had Saturday stuff.
And
every day, just talking.
And he made me write a paper. The school did not. He made me write a reflection paper when it was all over that I submitted to him.
Wow.
So every day we would sit in the band room and he would basically say, "What'd you see? What'd you hear? What'd you learn? What'd you notice?" And he just made me talk. It wasn't like him going da 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 da. Like he made me say what I observed, to kind of synthesize and to put into action, or to make it more formidable in my mind,
Sure.
solidify, I should say. But he just did that every day. And when we went out, after marching band rehearsals, if the staff went out for pizza or whatever, I was going there. When the musical team was meeting, they were talking about choosing a show, I was there. So it was everything he was getting into. And so what it taught me was, there was a lot of things I learned about rehearsals and about leading a band program and about podium technique and teacher technique. But the biggest thing I learned was how to be a mentor.
Fascinating. Because you just saw it happen every day.
He did it for me. He didn't owe me anything. I was asking to be a part of his program. And he said, yes, but under these conditions and these ideas, that you're not going to take this lightly. And this is going to be a formidable experience for you. And you are going to try hard, and you're going to show up to everything, and you're going to do what I do. And so he showed me what a mentor should be. He didn't take it lightly. So that was the thing. It was he didn't take it lightly. It was an honor for him, but he was dialed in.
Did you realize that at the time, kind of the gift you had with him?
No, I didn't. I think until I started talking to other classmates and what they did, and how they were in and out, and how maybe they were part-time, and then how I've seen some student teachers come through our program, or maybe in the high school, and this may be how they're here for a few months, and they weren't as in depth. I think Ken really said, okay, if you want to be a band director in the Midwest and you want to be in marching band, this is what it is.
So looking back, you're talking about this, that the biggest thing is you learned how to be a mentor.
Yeah.
Was that something you kind of realized after the fact too? Because in the moment, I'm sure 21, 22-year-old Mr. Peterson is learning how to be Mr. Peterson. You're
Right.
Man, I'm figuring out how to be a teacher. But did you kind of figure out wow, he's really teaching me how to be a mentor to somebody, to have that relationship?
No, I don't think so. I think it was probably not until much later in my teaching, till I came back to Concord, which would have been my 5th year of public school teaching, because I did 4 in Kentucky, then up here. And I think being aware, and it probably even took longer because I needed to kind of get my feet under me and feel like I wasn't just a beginning teacher,
Sure.
right? And so maybe I was able to reach out to new people on staff, or having student teachers under me, through local schools here. But I think it was the gift of time. I was
the
like,
gift of time.
the gift of time.
That half hour every day.
Yeah, and to say I'm going to carve this out, and we're going to just talk through things. And it was, what do you see? And it wasn't so much of this is what you need to do. It was more like reflective on me. What did Steve, see? So that made me open my eyes and want to, when I've seen younger students or student teachers or teachers come across my line of vision, that is something that is in my mind about this is how you treat people that are new in your program or new to the community of teaching.
You know, student teaching and the cooperating teacher, that role and that idea is probably pretty unique to the profession.
Right.
Typically unpaid, or typically you are paying.
You are paying. It's
through
a class.
It's a
right?
class through your school, right? And not only that, but you know, if you're an intern at a company XYZ, there's probably more benefit for the company to have an intern than there is a cost, so to speak.
Right.
But if you're doing student teaching right, maybe even if you're doing an internship right, there's going to be almost equal gain to equal effort put out to grow that teacher based on what they're giving you too. Because as you said, it was the gift of time. And Steve Peterson got a lot better with Ken Snook, but Ken Snook had to spend a lot of time to make that happen, you know. And I think that seems very singular to the
the student teaching experience.
To the student teaching experience,
Right.
that to have that experience go well for both the student teacher and for the cooperating teacher,
Right.
there needs to be a lot of time put in and a lot of intentional planning.
Right. But who knows? Maybe for Ken, I mean, you know, we're friends with Ken. We could ask Ken about, you know, he's had more than student teachers and myself, and now he's retired. But also, maybe did that sharpen his toolbox?
I would have to
because
imagine.
he saw one of his students, me, reflecting back like what I saw, and then he wanted to know maybe what was hitting or not hitting, or we're going to work on 1, 2, 3 ABC today, and Steve, you're going to try that in class, and then Steve's not getting this, you know, and maybe he reflected on that as a teacher.
Right, because you do have to kind of figure out, like, differentiating for your students. You might have to differentiate for your student teacher. It's the same idea. Like, okay, that didn't hit. Yeah, how can I do this better? Well, and you've had student teachers.
Yes.
Did it make you better?
Oh yeah.
Well, there you go.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, and that's kind of why the profession works the way it does,
Right.
and student teachers keep coming back.
Right, and it allows you to. Well, it's just like we've talked about the balcony before, about when you're in your classroom or in your rehearsal room and you're saying certain things to a student. If I'm speaking into a classroom and I'm talking about woodwind tone color and I'm talking about woodwind phrasing, what would Ken Snook think about that? You know, he's in my balcony. So if I'm a student teacher, and then if I'm the cooperating teacher and I'm leading a class, and there's a 21-year-old student there talking, and they're looking at me, and then am I being as clear as I can? Am I being as engaged as I can? Am I scaffolding okay? Am I engaged? Am I being helpful? Is my personality warm and welcoming? You know, am I organized? Am I punctual? I mean, yeah,
Well, it's
I
all things to
think
think about.
being a cooperating teacher is like having a mirror in front of you.
It is.
So,
and I think it's interesting too. Like, I'm sure there are some teachers out there in profession that would want a student teacher to maybe spread the weight a little bit.
yes.
But I'm sure there are a lot that too want to get better themselves.
Yes.
And I mean, and it hits all over the place. So the reason we're talking about this today is because we actually had a listener get to us and contact us and say, could you talk about this? Like, I'm interested. And this person who emailed us is not a teacher.
No, they're not.
Completely-
Not a music teacher. Not a music teacher.
Not
a leader.
They're a leader.
leader.
They're not in education, so to speak. But ooh. This is the joys of recording in a public school. There you go. So this person reached out to us and just said, can you guys talk about this? Because this is something that I do in my day job, even though I'm not an educator, quote, but I do lead people and have to train people. So I like talk about that relationship. And, you know, the other side of this is that as teachers, we kind of get in the habit and just know how it feels like to teach people who are not our peers. That I guess subordinates feels like kind of like an icky word, but I mean students is not the same relationship, because in a classroom it's like expected to do, they do what we tell them to do.
Yes.
And it's easy to be more direct because you don't necessarily take what your teacher says always personally, because we're just trying to teach, trying to help you. But when you're speaking to a peer or someone who's also a professional,
Yes.
it can be kind of intimidating to try and be direct and give that feedback.
Yes.
And so talking maybe through some of that, like what that looks like for us. So Steve has had many, well, maybe not many. You've had, 3 or 4 student teachers?
3.
3?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we've had some. I've had some that have been assigned to me directly, and then some that we've kind of quote shared.
Sure.
And maybe they were with like the head director of music, and then they were with us through 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, or with me part-time through music theory or something like that. But so yeah, you could it's more than that. So like 4 or 5, right? And but I think, like for the people that are like looking out for the mentorship, menteeship, the number one, this is a repeat, but the number one raw material is time. And you may not have time in your day job to do 30 minutes, right, to talk with that person every day. But I think it's the consistent time, and whether that would be a daily 5-minute interaction or a weekly, mentor meeting, and just kind of talk about things like, how are things going, and to check in, but have that rhythmic check-in.
Yep.
That expectation that you're going to check in and that you're not going to forget about them. I feel, and we've seen this before, but student teachers who sometimes come into a school system and they're kind of like treated like a teacher. Like as in the teacher gets more prep.
Right. You're like, oh, you got this.
You go ahead and
go
take that.
ahead.
And I'm
you
like,
got
oh
it.
gosh, no. You should never, I must have eyes on you at all time. And if not for your safety, for everybody's safety, but just also for the well-being, like you got to get some feedback.
Yes. Well, that's also, I think, the law.
I would hope so.
I mean,
you
I
cannot
remember
leave a
hearing
kid
that,
alone.
like when we were sent out to student teachers, said you can never be in a room without a cooperating teacher. You have to be, if you're teaching a class, there always has to be a licensed educator in
that
there with
makes
you.
sense.
And I was like, okay, got it, check.
Right.
Yeah. So you were able to do a little check-in time with
Yes.
your mentees.
Yes, and then also ask them to keep a journal. I can
Oh, you did
remember-
do that with
I
them.
did.
That's
and
cool.
Say, keep a notebook, and let's write down some of these ideas that you remember. And then also giving them tasks, saying, okay, you're going to teach this week on secondary dominance in music theory, and you're going to teach this lesson, and you saw how far I've gotten the kids. This is where you need to get the kids to, and then we're going to debrief. We're not just going to say, did you get it done? Good. No, we're going to go back and we're going to walk through, like, how did those steps go? Were you surprised? Did it go better than you thought? Did it go worse than you thought? Just this kind of brainstorming. And but
Well,
yeah,
I would have to imagine too, like the process of that. If you did that like on lesson 1, and then you fast forward 3 months and they're doing that on lesson 24, I would hope their teaching is better, but also I bet the reflection process is better.
Yes.
And if you can reflect in a strong way, that would make your teaching get exponentially better. If you can reflect on what you did poorly and how to fix it and notice those small things.
Yes. Good point. Small things, like be direct. Example, I still have that journal. I should flush it out.
Great.
Because I can remember the first thing that I put in there.
Ooh, what do we got? What do we got? First thing.
Caffeine intake has a direct effect on your anxiety or nervousness in front of a group of teenagers. Now, that was 21-year-old Steve talking about that, because I can remember when I took over the wind ensemble for the first time for Ken, I must have been a hot mess. But I got really into coffee at that time in my life, and I was totally jacked up, hard to believe. but I was shaky, and my voice was shaky, and my conducting skills were shaky, and I remember writing like caffeine intake impacts your confidence and your anxiety and your nervousness. But I can remember doing things like Ken would say, like he'd be very specific. He's like, you're not using a teacher voice when you talk. You're using your voice. You got to he'd said, you got to be demonstrative. And he encouraged me to practice my teacher voice. So I can remember being in the car saying the alphabet in a deeper voice and projecting it. He told me that, you got to speak to the back to the room. And so I would practice that in my car. He would, like when we had a concert, he's like, okay, you're going to direct these tunes. No, he said, you get to choose the tune. You choose what you want to do. You copy it, you rehearse it, you sight read it, you prepare it with the kids. But then also, you're going to talk to the parents about what this tune is, who's the composer, where did it come from, why are you doing it? And he's like, you have to speak in Mr. Peterson voice. You need to get on a microphone in front of 300 people and talk to them. And I remember,
okay.
I was practicing that, and I can totally remember doing that. And I still remember that word demonstrative, and he'd be in the back of the room, like point to the chest or just, like giving me a hand signal, like you got to use your teacher voice.
Well, and that's so good for him that he did that. I mean, good for you too, but like, I can just imagine that a lot of cooperating teachers might have a hard time being direct about saying that stuff. And
Yes.
it's like, well, your voice is kind of quiet, which the irony is that like they can't do it themselves, right?
Right.
Like, no, like you got to tell these people, because if you don't
yes.
tell them, it's not going to get better. And then those teachers are going to go into classrooms and they're going to talk like this to their classes and get upset when they're still talking. Like, no, you got to do that stuff. So thank goodness that Ken did that, and like obviously that has been reflected in your teaching as well.
Right.
And that now you're able to give that on to your kids.
Right.
That you can be demonstrative and say, no, you're not doing this, fix it. Which is really teaching.
Right.
That's all we do.
So what about your experience? Like, we don't have to talk about student teacher. I know that you also went through, like, we do a training program here at TOPS. You and I were involved in that. But then also as a teacher, we talked about teachers being mentors, not just to your peers, but to maybe some of our students that are aspiring to be leaders. And so we're giving them feedback. I think about freshman band, some of those activities we did, and some of the off the script talks with students, like one-on-one or one-on-two, say, hey, you might want to try doing this. And we're talking about like helping develop leaders within your group. So we're not just talking notes and rhythms, but we're talking about helping students to become more effective leaders with their peers. So they're kind of being the mentor to other kids,
yes.
But then we're helping,
yes.
We're mentors for them.
Yeah, most band programs really start to flourish when you get some sort of student leadership set in place. And that is something that Steve and I take an interest in. But for me, I think that stuff started, and maybe for you too, like back in, you went to drum major camp?
Yes.
As a high schooler?
Yeah, George Parks.
But mine was the DMA, drum major, at Music for All.
George Parks was...
You actually had George Parks, right?
I was taught by George Parks.
George Parks passed away like the year before, but I had his, I think his protege, Heidi, I don't remember her last name.
You don't remember her last name?
I wanted to say Snyder, but I'm like, no, that's not her. Wrong one.
No, she's the one that gets to school at 5
Sarver.
a.m.
Heidi Sarver. It was close.
That was one at George Parks. George Parks was this iconic drum major, university drum major, but then became a college band director. But he did these leadership camps that he called drum major academies, and it was developing student leaders.
And for those of you non-marching band people, a drum major does not, in fact, play the drums, but a drum major is a student leader, student conductor that stands in front of a marching band and conducts them. So my senior year, the summer before, I went to Ball State University for about a week and attended like a leadership camp on how to conduct and how to be a leader. And that like totally like kicked me in the rear, like in a great way.
What happened?
Because it like totally humbled me. I thought like I mean, what being a leader was like, puffy chest, being in charge and telling kids
And
what
this
to
was
do.
before your senior year.
Before my senior year, that summer before. And that camp was like all about service. And just like the leadership aspect of that is like telling you like, no, you got to like talk to kids and you got to do things when no one's looking, because those things need to get done. And you're not doing this for any glory, but you're doing it for the betterment of the group. And you need to make yourself available to any person, whether that's your director or, freshmen in the band or parents or whatever. Like you're their person. Like you talk to them and you listen and you see what's going on. And that kind of was like revolutionary for me, like hearing how that worked. And I remember being really like excited by that and coming back and like, I made it my goal like the first week of band camp to like memorize every freshman's name, because I wanted to do that.
Because they told you that in camp.
They told us that like, you got to know who your people are, and you got to like, you're here for the people. You're not here for a title. Right. So that was kind of where things started for me. And I kind of liked that process. And that was like, honestly, that was like a big part of pushing me into going into education, because of the people side of it. Yeah. And that was a really cool experience. So fast forward to my senior year of college, student teaching. Yeah. I had a really impactful experience doing that, because I got to do a lot at the high school where I taught. I got to do a lot. Yeah. And working with their marching band, like I was like teaching sectionals all the time. Yeah. Which was really good for me to just kind of get started doing that. And, one thing I remember they had us do is film ourselves. I know we've talked about that with you. Dude, that was painful.
That's awful.
To watch. It's that if you want to get better at something, just literally record yourself doing it, because the camera don't lie.
Well, this podcast.
I know. That's amazing we're still going.
I know, because when I listen to these, I'm just like, oh my gosh, no wonder we don't.
Shut us off. Why aren't the producers still letting us? Oh, because we're okay. Yeah, great. It's true. So
you guys need more guests on this show, because you can't carry the
truth.
You
need only guests, no hosts, just guests. So that, watching myself teach, I was like, oh my gosh, why am I talking so much? That stuff is not getting better. That kid in the corner is doing nothing. Oh, he's talking. Oh, he just left. Oh, he's not. You just let him leave and you didn't even know. Great. Nice job, buddy. But that was totally revolutionary in figuring out how to teach, because student teaching is just, this was my experience, but I just felt like I was bad for a long time. Like I felt bad.
I think the translation for student teaching is one who cannot teach. That's kind of like I don't think anybody is going through student teaching going, man, nailed it.
Like, right.
You're
just
like,
wow, that
failure,
was awesome.
I am awful. Like, why doesn't everybody leave after their student teaching experience going, I'm out of here?
Dude, the guy I went to
run away, like it's like the Hunger Games again.
Dude, a guy I went to college with, he was an ed major, and he was an English ed, and he and I were like pretty close, and it was like the first day of student teaching, and he came home from school that day, and he's like, dude, I'm changing my major. And I was like, no, nice. And he's like, no, I'm just getting an English degree. He said it like that. He was like totally just like, I can't.
He didn't go through?
I'm just, no, he couldn't. He was like one day in the classroom, he's like, nope.
I'm still, interesting, similar to him. I'm still trying to figure out if this teaching thing is going to work.
Is this for me? Is this for me?
I'm giving it another year. It's a year-by-year contract, just like the school goes. I'm with myself, like trying to figure out if this teaching thing is going to work for me.
Well, student teaching, I think, is like a huge attrition rate in college.
Yes.
Like that's when you know, because they tell you like the most exciting
$100,000 in. I don't know. I think I'm going to be a psychology major.
I hear business majors make money, but they tell you like at the beginning of college, like, your favorite thing out of this experience will be student teaching, and if it's not, you'll probably end up changing your major. Like, I swear they said something like that. But honestly, that was like my favorite part of college, was getting to student teach, because it was like what I wanted to do. But that doesn't mean it was easy, and it definitely didn't mean I was good at it, because I was not. And fast forward out of student teaching, I did enjoy the experience, and I wanted to stay in teaching. Arrive at Concord High School. Concord has a program called TOPS, Teacher Orientation Program, and they assign you a mentor teacher for every first-year teacher. And hey, guess who my mentor teacher was?
Bingo. TOP. Yeah. I was trying to think of another like bad acronym, like terrifying, outstanding people.
Yes. No, I
Yeah.
don't have one on the spot.
I was your TOPS representative.
TOPS representative, Steve Peterson. Teachers on payroll. Teachers over.
Teachers out of pay.
Teachers
What?
out of pay.
Teachers out of pay.
AKA teachers. Okay. So Steve was my mentor, and obviously that was not like a normal mentor experience since I already knew Steve
It
growing
was
up.
abnormal.
It was abnormal. But you did kind of take some time for me and make
Yeah.
that happen. And I remember we co-taught the concert band that year, and I was a hot mess trying to figure that out. But you kind of had me do a student-teacher role in that because I was your assistant.
Right.
So you said, I'm taking 2 tunes. Jack, you're going to take a tune. And you'd be like, Jack, you're teaching warm-ups this day.
Yeah.
Jack, you're going to
Yeah.
make copies for this.
Right,
and like
right.
you kind of helped me settle into that role. And then that was pretty paramount to my teaching experience
Yeah.
of having that.
Well,
And
that
then-
was cool, like doing a mentor program like that, because since we did teach together,
Yeah, that actually made sense.
it was like, of course.
Because most mentoring teachers, no one else co-teaches. Like if you're teaching
You would
English,
have to
you're
get
teaching
a
by yourself.
sub to watch your teacher teach,
You would have to.
right? So
That's true.
I saw Jack teach in the room, and he saw me teach.
You saw
and
me
it was
yard
like we were
sale every day.
well,
Good
you know,
times.
if it was mutual. I mean,
But I did say, like, I remember like tracking you down every day. I'm like, what do you got?
yeah.
What do you got?
And
you tell
we
me
did talk a lot.
all the time.
I
We
mean, it's
talk-
kind of like how this stuff here kind of got birthed, is because we
Yes.
started talking about that stuff. Like
Yep.
it became like a phrase, like what you got.
what you got.
And it would have been at the end of rehearsal or like going in, like, but we were kind of in cahoots all the time, like talking and scheming.
Yes, all the time. And then year 2, it was kind of the same thing. And then year 3, same thing until my year 3 was the COVID year and everything shut down. And then we were kind of doing the mentor-mentee relationship just to, keep our sanity, like
Yeah.
on those Sundays. Like,
Yeah.
did you hear from any kids today?
Yeah.
Did you
that's
get
right.
any emails?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Are you still? Do you have a beard now? What's going on?
I've gained 37 pounds.
I've gained 30.
I'm eating
Steve.
cold fish.
Steve is the reason I started running because of that. Do you remember that?
Yes.
You're like, dude, if we're not careful,
We're
we're gonna get fat and dumb. And I said,
I think I told the kids that. I said, this whole COVID thing's coming in here. Like, we didn't know what it was. But if we're out of school for 4 weeks, I said, don't become fat and dumb.
and I said, I'm not becoming fat.
And that's when you started
That's
running.
when I started running. Jury's still out on the second part. So that was the COVID thing, and that's kind of how we started having those conversations all the time. Then fast forward more to kind of like 5th year, 6th year, Jack, somewhere in there teaching, being interested in this kind of mentor-mentee relationship. I wanted to give that on to my students, and
Yep.
I still have, and all of us have some really smart kids that kind of have a knack with leadership and a knack
Mhm.
with people, and can kind
We
of
call that aptitude. I don't think it has to be knack. I think the people out there know that we're saying it's aptitude.
aptitude. I didn't know you knew words that big, Steve.
Aptitude, 3 syllables. Aptitude. Aptitude.
Yeah, spell it. Aptitude. Aptitude. They have an aptitude for leadership. And in
Or
the
knack.
Can I go? Can I just keep
Please.
I'll cue the ending music here. So there are some students that really wanted to do that, and being in the marching band, it's so helpful if you can have kids kind of take on more of that responsibility. So I had some students that liked that, wanted more of that, and I gave them those opportunities. And I remember kind of doing a similar thing. Like I would say, okay, you guys are going to take this group of 5 kids, and you're going to teach them this 8-count move or rehearse this 8-count move. Go. And there might be a pocket here, a pocket there, and I'm just kind of wandering and I'm watching, and then we come back in, and then we continue. And then at the end of rehearsal, I'll pull those kids aside and say,
Yep.
what do you got? You know?
Right, what do you got?
Now, we started something this year in marching band. Was that the Ring of Fire? You remember that?
That's good.
That was good.
Yeah. We got into Kevin,
Kevin.
right? That was that freshman band camp?
Wait, we talked about this. We talked about this on an episode already. This was summer, but yeah, freshman band camp. Didn't we talk about this?
Yeah, we did, because we did talk about Kevin, but the Ring of Fire, but it was exactly go ahead. It's okay.
It was the same thing, but it's terrifying to student teach because you're in front of kids for the first time. I think it's extra terrifying to try and teach your peers in high school. Extra terrifying.
Ferocious.
ET,
Terrifying, yes.
extra terrifying. And these kids,
Body,
I mean,
yeah. Okay.
what does the B stand for? Business.
Business.
I like it.
Okay.
I thought you were going to go.
No, you're talking about how teenagers teaching other teenagers is terrifying.
So here's how this goes. We take our seniors,
Yeah.
and we don't have every senior teach, because not every senior wants to.
Right.
But we take the ones that do. So we gave each group, there were like 6 groups. No. 5 groups.
Mm-hmm.
Probably had 25 students, air quote students in them. 20 to 25?
Yes, and then there were like 2 or 3 quote leaders per ensemble.
Yes. And there was one leader who was like the head teacher.
Yes.
And then kind of assistants. And we said, okay, this group, forward march. That's all you're teaching. This group, backward march. This group, horn snap. And that's kind of all it was.
Right.
You got, what did we say, 5 minutes?
5 minutes.
Which, listening, you're like, that's not a lot of time. How do you get that stuff done? 5 minutes, teach them, go. And then Steve and I had the lovely opportunity to kind of walk around and watch all the groups and see what was going on.
Kind of graze the teaching field, see what was going on.
And we go, or, whoa, or, oh, that was good, or, oh, boy.
Oh, boy.
And then after the 5 minutes cut, the groups rotate, but the leaders run into the center, what we called the Ring of Fire, because we
had
made
a
a
Johnny
circle.
Cash thing going on.
And didn't you have like you always have some manipulative,
thing, yeah. What was it?
You call it stupid. I threw you a bone. I called it a manipulative. That's what we use in the teacher talk. You're like, some stupid thing.
Well, there's something like
because right now he's got the marbles, right?
Captain Queeg.
And
brass marbles.
how often do those come up in class? Like you say,
Every day.
what would Captain Queeg, and then you go into
every
that.
day.
And the kids
I got
are
a
like,
poster of them
yeah.
today. Tomorrow when you come into jazz band, there's going to be a picture of Captain Queeg. Watch the Cane Mutiny if you've never seen it. Humphrey Bogart. Anxiety problems, brass marbles. Okay, so what was the manipulative that I used?
Wasn't it some like brass like tuba sealant mouthpiece you found on the, you know what I'm talking about, that goes on the ring of the snake of the tuba?
Oh, yeah.
And you're just like, you found that and you just like set it down. You're like, Ring of Fire, and then you play the Johnny Cash song, and then the kids start dancing.
Yeah.
He spent hours trying to come up with something really meaningful for these kids. He spent hours, and he actually went to Lowe's to find that and made up a story so he could say he found it on the practice field.
Right.
That was
Ring
really
of Fire.
He spent exactly 4 seconds on that.
Yeah.
5 seconds prior to rehearsal. And we talked through with the kids like what went well,
Right.
what did not go well, and with their thoughts. And the first thing every kid said was like, that 5 minutes felt like 5 hours. Because they probably were great for 30 seconds, and we're like, all right, nope, we still got, no.
And so that's a great exercise, and I look forward to doing some kind of system like that again this year.
Yes.
With the students, but because they got to teach the same thing 4 times or however many groups, like it was passed around. And so the same team of teachers, the lead and then like the 2 assistants or the 3 assistants taught it. Mm-hmm. And so the fun thing was that it did improve every time. They did get better.
They did.
And they could take the directions to heart, like maybe, like we would joke around, and we already talked about this, but like the Kevin, Malone thing from Office, like why use many words when few words do trick, like, and we talked about that, like using less words, about being more demonstrative, like using a teacher voice, being louder, than maybe just doing something more simple, but doing it more times. Like more reps, because what would happen, just like we've all been in that dumpster fire of teaching, where you have a 30-minute class and you talk for 25 minutes and the kids get to practice for 5, and you're like, I don't know why they're not getting better. And so, teaching 101 is like helping your students do it again and again and again, and then also that was a little relieving to the teachers because they're like, oh, I can let them do they can do it, then I can critique them instead of always giving them input.
Yes. That's true, because like the young teachers, the stereotype is to talk too much.
Yes.
When I stopped talking so much, I got a lot better. But see, this is the thing. Everyone tells you to talk less, but you don't realize it until you choose to. I'm not making sense. I thought I talked less. And then I hit year 6 when I actually talked less. I don't. There was some disconnect. Like I thought I would speak less, but I figured a lot of things out last year. I'm not perfect. Definitely not perfect, but I had some aha moments.
Right. So then as we wanted our young teachers to be effective teachers, then we had to demonstrate that to them. And then we would have to give them clear directions about how to be a better instruction giver.
Yes.
And so, it was good for us because we had to watch our word count.
Yep.
And we had to be direct.
Yep.
And then we would have these meetings for, I don't know if we had a timer or what, but it was very quick.
It was like a minute. I think it was a minute.
And so we had like our hot takes.
Yes.
And then we said go, and then they would run back out. Then we'd start the clock again and then repeat the whole process.
And the first time to the second time, the kids said was totally different.
Right.
They were like totally improved. Yeah, that was a good thing. I want to do that.
So
again.
in wrapping up that little chapter of our podcast, that was great for the kids on the receiving end, like that were learning that new skill because they had their peers teaching them, right?
Yes.
It was great for the student leaders because they were giving instructions, but they were receiving instructions from us, their teachers. Then it was great for us because we were watching what those students internalized.
And it's great for the band because now the band is feeding itself.
Right.
How we teach. No, that was good. So that was like quite a few different mentee experiences. I think you were totally right with the gift of time. And I would like to add to that gift of authenticity.
Money.
Dude, if we paid student teachers, actually it'd probably get worse.
Wait. The gift of what?
Authenticity.
That's stupid. How's that for being authentic?
How's that for being authentic? How do we know the difference? Well, if you're, and by authentic, I mean, it's easy, like if you're not putting in the time to just kind of throw out like one-liners and, yeah, that was great. Or, you could do better at this. But if you're being mentored and you're the mentee, you're like, dude, come on. Like, I would feel frustrated if that was like what happened to me because I know like I'm putting in time and you're here to help me and like you're not invested and you're
investment is a good word.
And you're not being authentic like when you're telling me what I'm doing. And authentic can work both ways, but I would imagine it's usually like not being critical enough. And being critical in the correct way is challenging and not always easy, especially when it comes to being direct.
Yeah.
So what are some ways? Because I think you're good at this, Steve. You're just like really good
at making copies.
You're just good. Will you make these copies, Steve? You're just better at making copies. Steve, will you teach the woodwinds? You're just better at teaching the.
The word direct.
DIRECT.
ECT. Some people have that gift. And it's like, can make you frustrated or make you feel intimidated. Right?
As the receiver?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because people that are direct aren't so concerned. They're about getting the message out, not necessarily how it's going to land.
Okay. It's true.
And not that it's rude or like mean, but it's just, this is what's going on. Okay, what were you saying?
No, that's what I was saying. But actually, Steve and I talked about this on Friday. I told Steve one thing I appreciated. He remembers this. It was perfect. I was like,
because
I was like, Steve, I really appreciate like how you always like when you listen, you typically respond with a question, and he goes,
"Really? Like what?" And I wasn't even baiting him. I didn't even realize I was doing that.
But I told him
that's good.
I think it makes people lead themselves to their own conclusions
Yeah.
that are more objective
Yeah.
rather than being told what they should believe or thinking for themselves that
Yeah.
maybe they're not correct. But Steve does that when he listens to people, and I think, one, it makes people feel heard. Like that, like I hear you because I'm asking more about what I can do to seek understanding.
Yeah.
And Steve does that quite often. So that's why when Steve does his little leadership, like little things with kids, he'll go, so what do you think? How'd that go? And the kid might say, I thought it went well. Steve would say, why? Or why do you think that? You know, and then there's always like a dialogue.
So going back to minute 1 of this podcast, that's how I was taught. That's how, like, one of the most influential teachers in my life, like with Ken Snook, that's how he taught me. When I was like trying to prime the pump to become a teacher, he was the one doing that to me. It's come full circle now. Now I understand why I do that.
Fascinating. There you go.
He didn't tell me. He said, what do you think?
Because if you are told what you did, there's a chance you could disagree or a chance you might not notice
Right.
it. But if you're noticing it and you're
you're
reflecting,
reflecting.
which is a big thing of how Ken wanted you to be
Right.
taught, it's coming out your own mouth, it's coming through your own brain, then it's your truth. And if it's
Yeah.
your truth, you own it and you can do something about it.
Yeah. Wow, there you go.
So that's the challenge. Leading questions. The right questions for our students to obtain the truth.
Yeah, and I think the authenticity goes with it. Like, what were you thinking? Not like, what are you thinking, like in a snarky way, but what were you actually thinking? Like, what was your process to get here? You know, I work on that right now with like music theory, like working on mathematical equations in music theory, and like, why did you put this? What do you understand that what should have been the answer?
Because then you can diagnose it and see the disconnect.
Right.
Just like you can with a teacher.
Right. And you don't want them to say, well, I just didn't understand. No, like, what
No.
were you? No,
Show me.
Show me why you came up with this procedure and how you came up with this final answer. And then rather than me saying or the teacher saying that's wrong, no, it's this. Because maybe as a mentor, you can hear them say that, and then you hear what's going on, and you can help correct that behavior or that system, whatever we're working on.
Like basic example that I can think
Okay.
of, and this is stereotype music
Okay.
teacher, not looking enough at the kids, not looking at the kids.
Ugh.
Because if you're a music teacher and you're running an ensemble where your eyes all the time
On your
on
paper.
your paper, on your score.
Right.
And that's why they have the whole old adage like, get your head out of the score so you can get the score in your head. Something like that. That's a good
Yes.
one.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't say to a new teacher, you weren't looking at the kids. Because they'll go, yeah, I was. What are you talking about? How was it? They'll say, how'd that go?
Right.
And then you'd say, how do you think the kids responded to you? And they'll say, I don't know. I
They're
didn't
like,
look at
what?
them.
There were kids
There
in
were
the
kids
room?
in the room.
I was just counting the minutes down.
So then if they can lead themselves to that own conclusion, that's big. And the other side of that is, if you're asking questions, you're probably not going to be seen as that critical or that harsh.
Right, because you're
not
you're
accusing.
allowing them to come up with the answers.
Yes.
So it's kind of like you're indicting yourself, or you're on. You can make yourself innocent or guilty by your own experience.
Right. You're not fishing.
No,
You're
no.
just, well, I mean, you kind of are, but you're fishing in a unbiased way.
Right.
And you know as the teacher, like, your lesson plan with your kids, just as you know your lesson plan with your student teacher. I'm sure when you watch your student teachers, I'm sure you saw things that they were like naturally gifted at and things that they probably struggled with for a while until they got better at it.
Right.
And you were kind of honing in on that struggle, and you're thinking like, man, what's the best way I can get them to change it? And that might not be saying directly, you look down too much. It might be saying, what'd you notice with the kids?
Right.
How were their eyes? And if they go, I don't know, and you say, why do you think that is? Why do you think you don't know? I wasn't looking at them enough. Oh, okay.
Why weren't you looking at them? Because I have to look at my music because I don't know it well enough. Well,
Nope,
there you
there you go.
Maybe you need to study more
Maybe you need,
or listen more or something, right? Yeah, and it's all in the name of it's definitely that's a very appropriate topic for this podcast. Like, know your students, know
Perfect.
your teaching, and know your content.
Well, and they told us in a Concord PD, that was like a suggestion they had. Like if a kid, and this kind of goes back to like the Frank Troika-ism of every behavior isn't really a behavior, it's a skill.
Yeah.
Like if a kid is, on their phone, you instead of saying put your phone away, you could say, where should that be right now?
Right.
Elementary, but it does reframe it as a do this because I'm the teacher and I said so too. Let's take some time to be self-aware here. So yeah, where should your eyes be on the kids?
Right.
Put your eyes on the kid. There you go.
We get enough hot takes in this one? Jack has been carving up these things, and
Yeah.
Okay? Was it loud enough at different times?
I don't know. I think we're good. Do we get the funnies in? We okay? I don't know.
I don't know.
Because this podcast is about being funny. That's why we have so many good ratings. I don't know why I just said that. Can we shut this thing off?
Let's go. Okay, so if you are enjoying our podcast, please subscribe to our podcast and give us a review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. It's under Chops Podcast. Or you can go to TikTok or Instagram, and that's Chops_podcast.
Dude, we're getting close to like 1,000 followers on TikTok.
We should have like a big party.
Maybe
what?
for
On
right
TikTok?
here, we could put our follower count. Just like
Oh.
and then have like a meter.
Wait, we
that
have
goes up.
1,000 for TikTok or
We're-
Instagram?
We are at 8. We're over 800 for TikTok.
Okay, what are we at for Instagram?
360 something.
Why so low on that?
Because we went viral on TikTok and not Instagram.
Okay. Well, I just came across one of our reels that we did in Bandcamp, and we had 100 subscribers.
Dude, we were
Remember
so
that?
excited.
And the kids were like, "What up?
Yeah.
Woo!"
Yeah.
So 1,000
That'd be big. 1,000 on TikTok. We're 200 away. Less than 200 away. That'd be big. Do we need to throw a party? Chops party? You know how the schools do like the when they do the box tops, they always do like the little
thermometer?
We should get like a TikTok thermometer here. The problem is this is a classroom and kids would be like, "Why is there a TikTok thermometer? What is this Chops?"
Do you think the kids are going to
podcast?
notice in the back of the room? The desks are facing this way.
Yeah, if we turned around the desks in this classroom, would the kids notice?
No. We should do that, thermometer or something.
They try and go to a bathroom down like on the opposite side and like walk into like a classroom like what?
Well,
Wait a
I
second.
wonder if they would sit in the same chair.
or
but
they flip
180
on the 180-degree
yeah,
flip.
Interesting.
Dude, that would be funny.
Okay. We could do that next week. We could film some kids.
The funniest part, neither of us teach in this room.
No, this is just some room we rolled up on.
What up? They're like, why is that desk and those 2 microphones back there? It's been there for 6
Why
months.
are those lame-looking plants back here? It looks like a bad floral shop. I'll show you a bad floral shop. Look at my hair.
Dang, self-burn.
Okay, so it's about time.
Yeah, we have to go welcome incoming freshmen.
Jack, we get to. It's an opportunity.
I was trying to figure out where you were going to like get
It's
mad at
not-
me. We said welcome. I said welcome. I didn't say
You
say
you
what.
said we have to. I think it's an
Steve gets
opportunity.
to. I have to. We're gonna go welcome some new freshmen into the March Band program, even though it's January. Got to get that information out early.
Okay. Well, I think that's a wrap. Okay. So that is the mentorship and the mentees, mentor and mentees, or
and
mentos.
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 Mentors, mentees, mentos.
I have Mentos. I'm a man with
I got
toes.
10.
Mentos. Yeah. Okay, got it. Okay, so for Steve Peterson,
And Jack Hinkle.
we're out of here.
See ya.